Antonia, you introduced a concept on the podcast multiple times, and you have this really interesting distinction. You say, there's two styles of parents, you often say. There's the protection parenting, always going out and running to make sure a child doesn't hurt themselves, don't run into traffic. Let's protect. And then there's a second style of parenting, which is preparation parenting, right? It's about almost training and guiding a child to be prepared for life because the protection from a parent will be removed. And so we've talked about that. And I think usually when you talk about it, Antonia, you're applying it toward, not an infant. Like you're not talking about a toddler who needs preparation parenting. Obviously, a toddler would need protection parenting. So I want to take the concept that you brought and I want to add a third element to it and kind of talk about it in three different phases of a child's life. So this is just opinion. This is just us, kind of how we see it. There might be some more fidelity or nuance you could go down into with this, but this is basically how we've talked about it. And we could use that protection and preparation. And I'll add a third word, promote.
Yeah. Well, I think you're saying that we're not child psychologist professionals.
Sure.
So we're not talking about like a deeper theory, but at the same time, this has been a model that's been very helpful for us in our parenting.
Absolutely. So when a child is young, usually under the age of 12, before puberty, they need a lot of protection parenting. Don't run in traffic. Don't, you always make the joke. It's like children are like little suicide machines. They're trying to kill themselves, not on purpose, but they just are trying a lot of things, right? Don't step off that ledge. Don't stick your fork in the light socket or the plug or whatever. Like there's all these things we try to protect children from hurting themselves or others just because they're young. They don't know what they don't know yet. And they need a lot of protection at that age. They're very vulnerable. They're gullible. They can believe what anybody tells them.
They're clumsy.
Yeah. So we're protecting them both physically, but also mentally and emotionally and psychologically. Like we're really trying to protect them as much as we can. We don't let them watch certain content, scary movies, certain inappropriate content for their age. We're protecting their mind, their heart, and their bodies. And now you transition after puberty into maybe more of the teenage years, up into maybe your 18 to 20 range. And really, this is all about preparation. No longer does a child necessarily need to be protected all the time. Might have already gone through puberty, but they're trying to understand, okay, what is the world going to be bringing to me? How can I be prepared? How do I do basic things like cook for myself or clean or do laundry or,
understand money
or work on a project or associate with the, somebody I'm attracted to romantically or a friend group, somebody hurt me, like all the different other levels that you're going to deal with the rest of your life. We help prepare children in their teenage years typically. And then I think the next step is promotion. I think when a child goes away to college, I think parents enter into, it's more of a coaching role. It's more for advice and support and promote the child into the next phase of life. Almost like try to find them opportunities, try to help them, get that scholarship for college or get the first job or create the resume. You're helping them promote themselves into this new world and reality they're entering as an adult. And hopefully that they can be an adult, not just adulting as a verb, but step into the role and the feeling that I am an adult in this world.
Yeah. And these aren't clean lines.
No. Every kid's going to be different.
Not just every kid's going to be different, but there's going to be a little bleed over in all of it. When they're young, you're also preparing them.
Yeah. And
when they're older, there's still ways to protect them. But the emphasis changes.
Yes.
When they're young, the emphasis is on protection.
Yes.
And when they're older, the emphasis is on preparation. So there's still some crossover here, but the prime directive has changed a little bit. And so it's not a matter of, at a certain age, you stop protecting them, but at a certain age, you stop focusing on protecting them and you start focusing on preparing them. And I think that's important. I think it's important to understand that if they're really little and your focus is on preparation and skill development, they might not have the sophistication to be able to live up to your expectations. Like they might need more emotional, psychological, or physical protection.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to prepare them too early, that might just be a weight on them. It might kind of crush their little spirit because you're so insistent that they build skill when they're kind of too young. They kind of need to be held a little bit and maybe nurtured more. But when they get older, if you don't flip those focuses, if you don't go to preparation, you're still protecting and coddling them, well, then now they're not going to be prepared for the world at all. They'll enter the world expecting people to take care of them all the time.
Yeah.
And the world won't. And then they'll be shocked and surprised and feel entitled to something that they're really not entitled to. So the focus needs to shift, even if there's still bleed over in some of these areas. How to do self-parenting is, in my opinion, it's the first awareness that it's necessary, and then the willingness to take over the job that your parents stopped at a certain point.
Yeah.
And I think when we have an eternal child part of us, which we all do, all of us have what's called a pure eternus inside of us, this eternal child energy that pops up. And in type theory, it's associated with a specific cognitive function, but I don't think it even needs to be in order to understand it. There's an eternal child part of us that gets really upset when life is unfair, when things don't go our way, when we feel like other people are taking advantage, or they're not seeing our contributions, or they're not acknowledging or giving us sufficient amounts of approval. When we want to be taken care of and nurtured, when we want other people to be responsible for us. Everybody has an eternal child part of themselves that's the wish. The wish is that we are somebody else will be the adult and we can be the kid. Now, even if we're in a time period where as adults, we are, that we're self-directed, we have our own job, we take care of our own bills, we live on our own, we're doing a bunch of things that I guess the contemporary world would call adulting, right? We are acting and living as an adult. It doesn't mean that there's not a part of us that wishes somebody would take this all off our shoulders, that somebody else would actually be responsible for us. Now, if we can if we're unaware that this is an energy that is important for us to keep as an energy, but to know its place, meaning that the eternal child energy that's inside of every human being is a beautiful thing because it also taps us into play. It taps us into vulnerability. It taps us into all these beautiful childlike qualities that we don't actually want to lose as we get older. And the more disassociated people are from their eternal child, it's almost like the less joy they have, right? Like there's a joie de vivre that comes through that energy. So we don't actually want to separate ourselves from it or disown this archetype that lives in all humans. We don't want to get rid of it. But we also don't want it to become the dominant energy or the dominant archetype that's setting the tone for how we're interacting with the world. It doesn't set us up for life. If our eternal child energy is always looking for somebody to take care of it and thinks the world is unfair if it's not being taken care of, then it will create a lot of interpersonal problems. It'll create a lot of suffering because we're always looking for somebody to be our mom or dad. And we're not always aware that that's what's going on. We interpret it as everybody's really unfair, or my boss is really unfair, or why do I have to do this job, or why do I have to, it's just this general sense that the world is out to get us because it's requiring us to step up and be responsible. Yeah. And every act of adult responsibility to the eternal child feels like an ask that's too much, because it is for that part of who we are. It really is. It's outside of that archetype's province to be able to fulfill. So if this is the predominant archetype that we're carrying from situation to situation, life will always feel unfair. It's why it's easy to become a martyr or take on a victim complex, because to a child it is unfair, and rightly so. So there are other archetypal energies inside of us that can take the mantle. But the first thing we have to understand is there is a part of 100% of people who feel this way. So the problem isn't feeling that way. The problem is allowing it to be the predominant archetype.
Yeah.
So how does one take on self-parenting? They do it by recognizing that there's also a parental energy that lives inside of us at the same time as an eternal child.
Yeah.
That just like there's an eternal child part that wants everybody else to take responsibility for us, or somebody to take responsibility for us, there's an equal, if not stronger, opportunity to step into a parental archetype energy, which also 100% of people have. So there is a part of us that's actually rearing to go to self-parent. There's a part of us that's ready and willing and able to take on the mantle of being a responsible adult.
Yeah.
But I think part of doing that is understanding what it means to be a parent to begin with.